Gloria, please, just listen. I'm trying.
I'm done trying, Tunde. I'm done waiting.
The soft-spoken driver who once waited for her in the rain wasn't enough anymore. She wanted chandeliers instead of streetlights, designer gowns instead of love that cooked with pepper and laughter. And she found it, or so she thought, in the arms of billionaire Richard Okeke. But when pride builds the house, truth always finds the door. Because the same hands that once held credit cards soon trembled beneath camera flashes, as the world learned how far she'd gone to buy an image. One dinner, one necklace, one mistake, and the life she traded her heart for came crashing down in silence that even money couldn't comfort. While she fell, the driver she once mocked was quietly rising, building Tunde Motors, a company born not from wealth, but from character. And when their roads crossed again, the lesson was clear. Love built on humility outlasts love built on pride. This is the story of a woman who left a good man for a rich one, and how karma taught her the true price of pretending. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? At Prestige Tales Africa, we bring you stories of love, betrayal, and redemption. Stories that remind us. Some people chase gold and lose their peace, while others lose everything and find themselves. If you believe every choice carries a price, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story will hit even deeper. Once upon a time, in the lively African city of Davenport, Tunde Olawale was known by his passengers as the street therapist. His car was small, but it carried laughter, stories, and comfort. Every evening, roasted corn smoke drifted through his window as he listened to strangers talk about heartbreak and hope. He often said, "Life isn't perfect, but the road keeps moving." What he didn't realize was that the road ahead would soon test his own heart. Tunde dreamed of owning a fleet of cars, giving jobs to other young drivers, and maybe one day opening a transport company. Yet, the woman he loved, Gloria Banjo, saw life differently. Gloria's beauty could stop traffic, light brown skin, long black hair, and the confidence of a woman who believed she deserved more. But her desires were sharpened by influence. Her flamboyant best friend, Vanessa, often teased her with cruel advice. "Gloria, you're far too beautiful to spend your life with a man who drives people around. You deserve a man who is driven." Gloria would laugh at the joke, but it stayed with her. Her mother's voice repeated the same message every evening on the phone. "My daughter, love is sweet, but wealth is security. Don't waste your youth on dreams." Little by little, Gloria's affection began to twist into frustration. When she looked at Tunde, she no longer saw the man who adored her. She saw a man who was trying but never arriving. That morning, Tunde arrived at her flat with a smile that carried both nerves and hope. His shirt was neatly pressed, the faint smell of aftershave lingered. "Gloria," he said, "you've been patient with me. Let me take you shopping today. I want to do something special for you." Her eyes brightened. "Shopping? You're serious?" "Completely," he said. "You deserve it." Vanessa, lounging on the couch, smirked. "Look at you, finally behaving like a man with means." Tunde laughed lightly, unwilling to argue. He just wanted peace, wanted her to smile at him the way she used to. Maison Royal Boutique shimmered with luxury. The air was filled with designer perfume and soft jazz. Gloria walked between rows of glittering shelves as if she had waited her whole life for this moment. She picked up bags, shoes, perfumes, piling them into the attendant's arms. "This one is perfect," she said. "And this, oh, this will go beautifully with my gold dress." Tunde followed, smiling through growing anxiety. Each glance at a price tag tightened the knot in his chest. At the counter, the cashier's polite smile faltered as she read the total. "Your bill comes to 642,000 naira, sir." The number echoed like thunder. Tunde hesitated. "Sorry, how much again?" Before he could say more, Gloria turned sharply. "You brought me here. Pay the bill." He whispered, "Gloria, this is too much. Let's choose a few items." "Tunde, please don't embarrass me. Be a man for once." The air changed. Conversations died. A woman nearby stared openly, shaking her head. The cashier looked down in discomfort. At that moment, a celebrity entered the store, and chaos erupted, fans shouting, cameras flashing. It was a miracle. Tunde seized the distraction, grabbed Gloria's hand, and hurried her out. Rain began to fall the moment they stepped outside. The perfume of the boutique faded into the smell of wet asphalt. Tunde turned to her, rain streaming down his face. "Why would you speak to me like that? I was only trying to make you happy." Gloria crossed her arms. "Because I'm tired of living small, Tunde. I'm tired of scraping by. I want more than kindness. I want a life that shines." Her words cut through him like cold rain. He didn't reply. He simply opened the car door for her, drove her home in silence, and watched her disappear behind her gate. That night, in his small apartment, the sound of raindrops against the window filled the silence she left behind. The ceiling fan spun lazily. The kettle whistled on the stove. Tunde sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. The man who smiled at strangers every day looked older, quieter. He whispered, almost to himself, "Maybe love built on money will always be poor." Outside, the city carried on with its endless noise, horns, laughter, life. But inside, Tunde's world had narrowed to the size of a single room and the ache of a heart learning to let go. Tomorrow, he would still drive. He would still smile. But somewhere deep inside, something had changed forever. Morning sunlight leaked through the thin curtains of Tunde's small apartment, turning the dust in the air into drifting gold. A kettle whistled softly. The ceiling fan creaked above him, its lazy rhythm matching the pace of his thoughts. It had been 2 weeks since the boutique disaster, and silence had become the new language between him and Gloria. She came over less often, and when she did, her perfume arrived before her apology. That evening, she stood in the doorway, scrolling on her phone while Tunde set plates on the small dining table. The smell of rice and beans filled the room. "Dinner's ready," he said, forcing a smile. She looked up, distracted. "I'm not hungry. I ordered something already." He blinked. "You ordered food? I've been cooking for an hour." She shrugged. "You know I don't like this kind of meal. Besides, I'm doing a live stream soon. My followers expect dinner in style." The words fell like stones. Tunde sat down quietly, the chair groaning under the weight of his silence. On her phone screen, a dozen hearts floated upward as Gloria adjusted her camera. "Hey, everyone. Tonight we're unboxing the new skincare set I got from Maison Royal. Let's glow together." Behind her cheerful voice, smoke began to rise from the forgotten pot on the stove. Tunde jumped up, grabbed a cloth, and pulled it off the fire just before the rice burned through. The smell of smoke and oil spread through the tiny room. "Gloria," he snapped. "You nearly burned the place down." She spun around, phone still in hand. "Why are you shouting? You're ruining my stream." "Your stream," he repeated, staring at the blackened pot. "I'm the one who has to fix the damage." She turned back to the camera, whispering through clenched teeth, "Lower your voice. People can hear you." For the first time since he met her, Tunde saw her not as the woman he loved, but as a stranger performing a version of herself for the world. He took a slow breath. "Gloria, when did we stop being real?" She didn't answer. The camera light blinked red. The show went on. Later that night, when the lights were off and the smell of smoke had faded, Tunde sat on the edge of the bed while Gloria scrolled through messages from Vanessa. "She says Richard invited us to a launch party tomorrow," Gloria said casually. "Who's Richard?" "A businessman. Vanessa's friend. He owns a few companies in town. He's successful." Tunde's jaw tightened. "And why are you telling me?" "I'm going with her," she replied, without looking up. "You can pick me up later if you like." He stared at her in disbelief. "Gloria, I'm not your driver." She finally looked at him, eyes cold. "Then maybe you should start acting like something more." The words sliced through him. He turned away before she could see the hurt in his eyes. The next morning, Gloria left before sunrise, a trail of perfume marking her exit. Tunde watched her from the balcony as she disappeared into a taxi, heels tapping against the wet pavement. The city came alive beneath him, street vendors calling out, buses coughing smoke into the air, and the faint laughter of children heading to school. The sound should have been comforting, but that morning it felt like noise without melody. He poured himself a cup of tea, staring through the steam. The phone on the table buzzed with a message from his mother. "My son, remember, patience is not weakness. Some storms clear the road ahead." He smiled faintly, typing a simple reply, "I understand, Mama." Then he looked around the small apartment, the worn sofa, the uneven tiles, the kettle still shining from use, and exhaled. The room was humble but peaceful, honest in a way the mansion dreams could never be. He realized then that love built on constant apology was a kind of prison, and silence could sometimes be mercy. Outside, the city roared. Inside, Tunde picked up his car keys and whispered to the quiet room, "It's time to move forward." He stepped into the sunlight, unaware that destiny had already started rewriting his story. Evening settled slowly over Davenport. The city's noise softened into the hum of traffic, the faint song of crickets, and the smell of street food drifting through open windows. Inside his small apartment, Tunde sat at the table with his head in his hands. The single bulb above him flickered. The air was thick with the scent of smoke that never quite left after Gloria's livestream fire. He had spent the day driving across town, hoping distraction would ease the ache. But everywhere he went, he saw couples, holding hands, laughing, sharing roasted corn by the roadside. Each sight reminded him of what he was losing. When the door finally creaked open, Gloria stepped in, dressed in a sparkling top and sequin jeans, her hair perfectly styled. She carried shopping bags and the air of someone returning from a better world. "Evening," Tunde said quietly. She dropped the bags carelessly onto the couch. "I'm exhausted. You have no idea how long the queue was." He frowned. "Queue? For what?" "The launch event, obviously. You know, the one Vanessa invited me to." Tunde forced a calm tone. "I thought you said it was just a party." She smirked. "Call it whatever you like. It was beautiful. Lights, music, people who actually know how to live." "People who know how to live," he repeated softly. "Gloria, do you even hear yourself?" She waved him off. "Don't start. You wouldn't understand." The distance between them had grown invisible but unbreakable, like glass. Every word she said reflected a life he could not reach. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, Tunde spoke without looking at her. "Do you ever think about us?" She turned, one eyebrow raised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when was the last time we talked about our dreams? Our plans? We used to talk about opening a small shop together." Her expression hardened. "That was before, Tunde. Before I realized we're not moving anywhere." He looked at her, heart tightening. "I'm trying, Gloria. I'm working every day to build something. Doesn't that count?" She sighed. "Trying isn't enough. I'm tired of waiting for someday." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the ticking of the wall clock and the distant sound of traffic. The next day, Tunde's younger sister Lara came to visit. She took one look at her brother's tired face and frowned. "Tunde, you haven't been sleeping well." He smiled faintly. "You can tell. You're my brother." "Of course I can." She looked around the apartment, her gaze settling on the untouched dishes in the sink. "Is Gloria still staying here?" "Sometimes," he said softly. Lara crossed her arms. "She doesn't belong here, Tunde. Not because we're poor, but because she doesn't respect the effort it takes to live honestly. You're breaking yourself trying to please her." He didn't respond. He simply stared out the window at the street below, where a group of children played, chasing a worn-out football with laughter that carried through the air. "She'll leave one day," Lara said gently. "You just have to decide if you'll be free before she does." Her words stayed with him long after she left. That evening, Gloria returned late. Her perfume filled the room before her voice did. "Tunde, don't be angry," she said quickly. "Vanessa's car broke down, so we stopped for drinks. Tunde didn't turn. You could have called." She frowned. "Must I report every movement to you?" "I'm not asking for reports. Just respect." Her phone buzzed. She checked it, smiled faintly, and typed a reply. He exhaled. "Who is that?" She looked up sharply. "Since when do you check my phone?" "I didn't. But I'm not blind, Gloria." "Then stop acting like one," she snapped. That was the moment something in Tunde shifted. Quietly, almost invisibly. The love that had once softened him began to harden into resolve. He turned off the TV and said quietly, "You should go." Gloria blinked. "What?" "I said you should leave. This isn't working anymore." She laughed, incredulous. "You're breaking up with me?" He nodded once. "Yes." The silence that followed felt heavier than the walls themselves. Gloria's eyes filled with disbelief, then anger. "You'll regret this, Tunde. Men like you always do." He didn't answer. She grabbed her handbag and stormed out. The door closed softly behind her, too soft for the storm it carried. Hours later, Tunde sat by the window, watching the rain return to the city. It fell like cleansing water over rooftops, cars, and memories. He whispered to the night, "Maybe losing her isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of me." The thunder answered like applause from the sky. The gates of Hillcrest Estate opened with a smooth whisper, revealing a driveway that looked polished enough to mirror the sky. Security lights traced the curve of manicured hedges. Water from last night's rain still glistened on the leaves. A pair of uniformed guards stood at attention as Gloria and Vanessa stepped out of a black SUV and into a world that smelled faintly of leather, sandalwood, and wealth. Inside, the mansion breathed silence. Marble floors stretched beneath towering chandeliers. Glass walls offered a sweeping view of Davenport's skyline. The soft ticking of a vintage wristwatch on the console table was the only sound, like a private metronome keeping time with money. "Try not to stare too hard," Vanessa whispered with a grin. "You might fall in love with the floors." Gloria didn't smile back. She was absorbing it all, how light moved across the glass, how footsteps echoed in dignified restraint, how even the air seemed curated. This was not a place for ordinary problems. This was a stage, and she was ready to perform. Richard appeared at the far end of the hall with the precision of a man who understood presence. Tall and composed, his tailored suit fit like a decision he would never regret. He didn't rush to greet them, he let the room announce him first. "Welcome," he said at last, and even the word felt expensive. "Vanessa spoke highly of you." "She always does," Vanessa replied. Gloria met his gaze, lowering her lashes. "It's a beautiful home." He studied her a heartbeat longer than was polite, not rudely, but as if he were weighing details the way some men weighed currency. "You have an eye for beauty," he said. "Shall we have dinner?" They moved to a dining hall framed by glass and soft lamplight. A long table held delicate crystal, linen folded with military precision, silverware that could have passed for sculpture. A server poured red wine. Its reflection rippled in the polished surface like a secret. Richard spoke little. He listened. He knew when to ask a question and when to leave silence alone. Gloria answered gracefully, laughter slipping from her like perfume. She was careful not to sound hungry for luxury, but she let the room imagine that she belonged to it. When she reached for her glass, Richard noticed the faint ridge of a healed blister on her finger, perhaps from carrying heavy bags or helping with some ordinary task she would rather forget. His gaze softened, then reset. "You strike me as someone determined not to be ordinary," he said. She held his gaze. "I learned to walk past what doesn't feel like home." "Comfort has its own demands," he replied. "And its own rewards," she returned, smiling. The evening unfolded like a negotiation disguised as courtship. By dessert, Vanessa was messaging someone across the table and suppressing her grin. Gloria kept her back straight and her voice even. If Richard wanted elegance, he would have it. If he wanted confidence, he would get it in measured doses. She would not appear desperate. She would appear inevitable. After dinner, he led them to the terrace. The city stretched below, glittering, humming, distant. The fountains in the courtyard murmured like a choir. A bodyguard discreetly shadowed the perimeter. Inside, a grand piano waited beneath a chandelier that resembled frozen rain. Richard turned to Vanessa. "Thank you for the introduction. If you don't mind, I'd like a moment with Gloria." Vanessa squeezed Gloria's hand and drifted back inside, already filming the chandelier for her story. Alone with him, the evening cooled. A soft wind lifted the edge of Gloria's hair. "Tell me what you want," he said. It was disarming in its simplicity. "A life that doesn't argue with itself," she answered. "A life that looks the way it feels." "And what does that look like to you?" "Security," she said. "Elegance. A future that doesn't depend on apology." He nodded as if adding up figures on an invisible ledger. "I understand." He did not touch her hand or invite her closer. He simply allowed her to stand in his world without being asked to defend herself. From that night, their association accelerated. Photos surfaced on Vanessa's page. Gloria in a silk dress against a grand staircase. Gloria laughing beside a black SUV. Gloria holding a champagne flute with a skyline rising behind her like a crown. Her mother called in tears of relief. "My daughter," Madame Ezin said, "God has finally remembered us." And across town, in a smaller world of kettle steam and traffic dust, Tunde scrolled past the images in silence. He turned off his phone and returned to the road. Weeks passed. Richard introduced Gloria to his circle, lawyers with careful smiles, boardroom veterans who wore success like tailored armor, women whose diamonds matched the cold precision of their compliments. Gloria smiled back. She learned which jokes to laugh at, which pauses to fill, which opinions to keep brief. She trained herself to move like furniture that made a room complete. One evening, under a chandelier whose crystals glowed like suspended dawn, Richard placed a small velvet box on the dining table. No speech, no flourish, just certainty. "Marry me," he said. Gloria inhaled softly. The moment arrived with the weight of every choice she had ever defended. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like a lock clicking shut, on the door she had chosen, and all the doors she had not. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit. Of course it fit. In the days that followed, she performed the role with near-perfect grace. She sent Vanessa an invitation to a private boutique fitting. She scheduled makeup trials. She held her chin higher than usual. But somewhere in the machinery of triumph, a small gear clicked out of place. A week later, on the terrace with the city beneath them like a map of light, she leaned against the cool glass railing, cradling a glass of wine. "Richard," she said, her tone light, "I'll need 10 million naira to prepare for the wedding. Dresses, hair, personal essentials. The usual things." He didn't look up from his tablet. 10 million. She smiled as if embarrassed by the number. "You won't even notice it." He glanced at her for a moment that lasted longer than her breath. Then he nodded once. "You'll have it tomorrow." Gloria's smile remained poised, but her heartbeat stumbled. When he turned away, she saw herself in the floor-to-ceiling glass, a graceful figure, perfectly framed and trembling. The chandeliers seemed too bright now, the silence too large. She remembered another kind of night, a smaller one, steam rising from a kettle, the hum of a ceiling fan, laughter that didn't try to impress anyone. She remembered Tunde saving half his fare to buy her ice cream because she said it reminded her of happy childhood days. Her palms pressed to the glass as if it could steady her. Below, Davenport's lights blinked like 1,000 watchful eyes. "This is what I wanted," she whispered. "This is what I chose." The tremor didn't stop. She straightened, smoothing the front of her dress, narrowing her voice into a single unbreakable line. No looking back. Yet the echo inside her did not obey. The next afternoon, Her message thread with Vanessa lit like a fuse. 10 million, babe, Gloria typed. He agreed. Vanessa's reply was immediate. We are upgrading your entire life. Start with jewelry. Statement piece. The world must see. They went. The boutique staff greeted her like ceremony. She tried on a necklace that caught light from every angle. It pulled the room's gaze the way the moon pulls the tide. Perfect, Vanessa said. It tells everyone the story without words. Gloria bought it. She rehearsed the reveal in her head, how she would walk into the next dinner radiant and complete, how even silence would applaud. She posted a careful close-up on her story, just enough to tease. Across the city, Richard's accountant compiled monthly disbursements. The entry appeared plainly: wedding preparation funds, 10 million. The receipt attached as a courtesy: high-end jeweler, one necklace, full payment. The accountant carried the tablet to Richard's study. The room smelled of old books and recent polish. A clock ticked. Richard scanned the figures, then the receipt. He placed the tablet down with exactness. Thank you, he said. Shall I? No, he said. I'll handle it. That evening, a private dinner warmed the main hall. The chandeliers were dimmed to a flattering glow, the long table laid with crystal and porcelain, the wine breathing. Influencers arrived in quiet excitement. Businessmen in conservative suits made conversation in low tones. Madame Ezin arrived with eyes already damp with joy. Vanessa glittered and filmed and whispered. Gloria entered last, wearing the necklace like a verdict. It caught the light with such authority that even the lamps seemed obedient. Heads turned. A hum of approval circled the table. She took her seat beside Richard, fingers resting lightly on the polished wood as if claiming it. Richard rose to speak. He was gracious. He thanked his guests. He spoke of commitment, of building a life that outlasts applause. He turned to Gloria with a faint smile. To a woman who knows value, he said. And to the truth, which reveals the difference between value and price. A server dimmed the lights another shade. A screen at the far end of the room glowed to life. No music. No fanfare. Just an image. The invoice from the jeweler, the timestamp, the line item, the sum. The room stilled. The sound of forks ceased. Breath drew in quietly. Gloria's smile faltered. She tried to speak. Her throat refused. Richard's voice was gentle. You asked for 10 million to prepare for a life together. You spent it to prepare for a photograph. Her mother rose halfway, then sank slowly back down, face drawn. I can explain, Gloria managed, eyes burning. It was for the wedding. For you, Richard said. Only you. Behind her, someone whispered, on the groom's card. It spread like smoke. Gloria's hand rose to her throat as if the necklace had tightened. Cameras lifted discreetly, then not so discreetly. Vanessa looked down at her phone, lips pressed into a thin line, not recording now. Richard didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. We all build a future with what we do in private. This is yours. Gloria's hand trembled as she unclasped the necklace. It slipped free and fell to the table with a sound that seemed too loud for something so small. A few crystals kissed the porcelain and rolled toward the edge like stray tears. She stood. The chair scraped. The hall elongated into a tunnel of faces, none of them kind. Without a word, she turned and walked, through the cool corridor, past the still piano, under the chandelier that felt like winter, out into the night air that did not smell of sandalwood but of rain. On the terrace, thunder rumbled beyond the hills. A few drops fell, leaving dark coins on the stone. She pressed the back of her hand to her eyes, smearing what was left of her composure. Inside, the dinner resumed without appetite. Richard remained standing for a moment, then sat and adjusted his cufflinks, as precise as ever. The fountains in the courtyard kept their rhythm. The mansion swallowed the scene without effort, because houses like this are designed to hold scandal without breaking. Only the silence changed. It grew heavier. Gloria descended the steps and crossed the drive just as the rain committed to falling. It flattened her hair, blurred her makeup, chilled her certainty. This was the life that promised she would never have to apologize again. And tonight it taught her how to leave without saying a word. The rain began as a warning and became a verdict. By the time Gloria reached the front steps of Hillcrest Estate, it was falling in hard silver lines, drumming against the stone like 1,000 small hammers. She kept walking, bare shoulders stung by the cold, mascara streaking into bruised shadows beneath her eyes. Headlights swung into the circular drive. A pair of photographers jumped from a sedan as if pulled by wire. There she is. Gloria, over here. Did you really spend 10 million on a necklace? Is the wedding still on? The flash hit her like lightning, white, hot, unkind. She raised a hand to shield her face and turned away. One heel slipped on the wet marble. She caught herself against a pillar, breath snagging. Please, she said quietly, not tonight. But nights like this are the reason cameras were invented. She hurried down the steps and across the drive, clutching the small evening bag like a fragile shield. The guards were already closing the gates behind her with the smooth indifference of men paid to keep weather and scandal on opposite sides of a line. Beyond the estate, the city swallowed her in wet noise, horns, tires hissing over flooded roads, voices sharpening under umbrellas. She flagged a taxi with a hand that would not stop shaking and slid into the back seat. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Madam, are you all right?" She nodded. "Home, please." "Which home?" he asked gently. It was a question with edges. "Mainland," she whispered. "Ajala Street." He drove. The meter ticked softly. The radio murmured to him, a choir stitched thinly through static. She stared at the smudged city lights and, for the first time in months, wished for silence. Her phone vibrated. "Vanessa, I'm sorry, babe. This is messy. I'll call tomorrow." Another message. "Mother, what have you done? The neighbors have seen the video. Call me now." A third. "A blogger she didn't know. We'd like your statement. 10 minutes on Zoom." She switched the phone off. When the taxi stopped beneath the broken street lamp outside her mother's building, the rain had slowed to a steady whisper. The stairwell smelled of damp concrete and kerosene. She climbed, each step weighted by the dress that had seemed lighter than air only hours before. Madame Ezin opened the door in a wrapper and headscarf, face taut with sleeplessness. "Get inside." Gloria stepped across the threshold into a living room that had too much memory and not enough light. A plastic fan turned on a crate near the window. A pot of stew simmered, scents of pepper and thyme grounding the air in something honest. Her mother shut the door, then stood very still. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." Gloria tried to speak and found her throat tight. "It was supposed to be," she stopped. Began again. "I asked for money for the wedding. He gave it. I bought a necklace." Her voice thinned. "He found out." Her mother's expression didn't change. "In public?" She nodded. Ezin inhaled slowly, then sat at the edge of the sofa as if a verdict had emptied her legs. "A necklace," she said softly, tasting the word as if it were a bitter seed. "You could have bought dignity for far less." Gloria closed her eyes. I thought it would make me belong there." "You can never buy a chair and call it a backbone," her mother replied. "Sit." Gloria Saturday. Rain threaded the space between their pauses. "When you were small," Ezin said, "you once gave your last biscuit to a boy crying outside your classroom. You told me afterward, if I have two, I should make two smiles. How did the girl who said that learn to spend 10 million on light and glass?" Gloria swallowed. "I thought if I looked the part, I wouldn't be afraid anymore." Her mother's eyes softened, then steadied. "Fear feeds on borrowed things. The more you borrow, the hungrier it gets." The words landed and stayed. Gloria bowed her head. A knock at the door interrupted them. Not a neighbor, too firm. Ezin opened it to find an aunt and two cousins, faces arranged in tight concern. "We came as soon as we saw," the aunt said, stepping inside without waiting. "Eh, Gloria. What shame. Why would you do this kind of thing to us?" "She needs rest," Esin said sharply. "Not judgment." But judgment travels at the speed of blood. The cousins looked away, embarrassed to be mirrors. Gloria stood, voice calm in the measured way of someone at the edge of a cliff. "Thank you for coming. I will speak to you tomorrow." She moved toward the bedroom. "Don't worry," the aunt said, not unkindly. "Tomorrow the bloggers will find someone else to chew." Gloria lay on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. Water traced timid lines down the wall near the window. Somewhere a baby cried, then surrendered to sleep. She waited for tears and found none left. Her phone, charging on the floor, vibrated back to life with the insistence of a mosquito. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the name, Richard. She answered, breath held. His voice was even. "A car will return your things tomorrow. The engagement is off." She closed her eyes. "I understand." "Gloria," he added, not unkindly, "you mistook the stage for the play." The line clicked dead. Her mother's voice floated from the other room, speaking to the aunt in a tone meant to be private and not succeeding. "The proverb says, when your shadow grows taller than you, evening has come." Morning took its time arriving. By 9, the hallway smelled of fried plantain and school uniforms starched too aggressively. A small crowd gathered outside the building, neighbors in slippers, a young man with a phone ready, 2 women with headscarves tied high. Gossip hangs best in humid air. "Did you hear? The necklace alone, 10 million. On. 4 beads. No, not beads, diamonds. On the man's money. Harbor." A black SUV idled at the curb. A driver in a charcoal suit stood beside it, 2 cardboard boxes at his feet. He knocked. Esin accepted the boxes without a word and shut the door. Gloria opened the first box and lifted the necklace. Without the wash of chandeliers, it looked smaller. A small star fallen into a cardboard night. She held it for a moment, then returned it gently, as if it were a sleeping thing she should not wake. Her mother watched. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," Gloria said. Then, more honestly, "I don't know who I am when I'm not borrowing light." Esin moved closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You are the one who once made 2 smiles. Begin there." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Vanessa, perfect hair under a hooded coat, sunglasses that pretended the sun was not shy. "I can't stay," Vanessa said, hovering in the doorway. "Everything is unstable. My page is getting attacked for promoting you. I need to keep some distance till it calms." She lowered her voice. "I hope you understand." Gloria did not step back, and she did not step forward. "I understand." Vanessa hesitated, then offered a quick, sympathetic smile that landed nowhere and left. The silence afterward was strangely clean. By afternoon, the blogs had harvested what they needed and moved on to another scandal across town. But shame is not a headline. It is a weather system. It lingers after the cameras fold. Gloria took a shawl and walked. The rain had washed the streets until they shone in strips of clouded silver. A vendor fanned smoke over a small grill. Plantain sizzled and caramelized. A woman in a lemon scarf balanced a basket of oranges on her head and called her price. Children darted past in choreographies of laughter. At the corner, 2 teenagers recognized her and whispered. She heard the word necklace drift like a paper boat and sink. She turned into a quieter lane where an old church kept its door propped open. Inside, the air was cool. The scent of wood polish and candle wax held the walls together. She sat on the back pew and looked at the simple cross, the opposite of a chandelier. No prayer came. Only an old proverb from childhood surfaced, like a fish in shallow water. When the river is over full, the wise man does not build a bridge of promises. He waits for the flood to pass. She let the word sit. She let the silence answer. When she stepped back into the afternoon, the sky had cleared. White shirts fluttered on a line between 2 balconies. A little girl hopped along chalk squares she had drawn herself, confident in invisible rules. Gloria found herself smiling, small and private. Her phone vibrated with a new message from an unknown number. "We're looking for a brand ambassador. Lifestyle and elegance. Interested?" She stared at it, then laughed once, quiet and brief. "Not this time." Another message arrived, a name she hadn't seen in weeks, Tunde. But it wasn't from him. It was a flyer for Tunde Motors shared in a neighborhood group. Clean white cars, a slogan about safe rides, a number to call. The sight pinched something inside her that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with mirrors. She typed a message to herself and saved it in notes. "If you want to shine, polish your character first." At the junction, thunder murmured again far away, as if the sky remembered last night and felt sorry. She pulled the shawl closer and walked home. Behind her, the city resumed its arguments and its kindness. In front of her, the road did not promise anything, but it did not refuse her either. Because in Davenport, karma does not always shout. Sometimes it simply removes the lights and asks you to see what remains. The city was softer that morning, washed clean by the night's rain. The roads glistened beneath a pale sky, and the smell of roasted corn mixed with the faint perfume of wet dust. Tunde parked his car by the roadside and watched commuters hurry past, their umbrellas bobbing like bright flowers. He felt lighter than he had in months. The silence in his chest was no longer hollow, it was peace. It had been weeks since he last saw Gloria. The memory of her anger had faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance that some roads are meant to diverge. A notification buzzed on his phone. Trip request, Clara, Business District. He smiled faintly. "Let's work," he said, starting the engine. Clara, the passenger, turned out to be different from anyone he had met in a long time. She was neatly dressed, calm, and polite in a way that made people breathe easier. When she entered the car, she offered a warm smile. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning. You're my first trip today." "Then I hope I bring you luck," she replied. Her voice carried the kind of gentleness that stayed with a person after they left. During the ride, she noticed the small motivational quotes pasted on his dashboard. "Keep moving forward, and a humble heart drives the longest road." She read them and smiled. "Did you write those?" He chuckled. "Some. Others, I borrowed from people wiser than me." "They sound like you've lived them," she said quietly. When they reached her stop, a law firm downtown, she paid the fare and paused before leaving. "Thank you, Mr. Tunde. You drive with peace. I needed that this morning." He nodded. "And you speak with kindness. It's rare." She smiled, then disappeared into the glass tower that caught the sun. For the rest of the day, her calm lingered in his thoughts like the echo of a good song. A week later, Tunde saw her again by coincidence, this time walking along the road, struggling to carry a food container and a stack of documents. He stopped. "Excuse me, aren't you Clara?" She laughed in surprise. "Tunde the driver." "Let me help you," he said, taking the container from her hands. They ended up sitting together on a bench outside a nearby office block, sharing roasted plantain and groundnuts from a roadside vendor. Their conversation flowed easily, about work, about family, about the strange ways life tested people before blessing them. When she learned about his dream of expanding his transport business, her eyes lit up. "My uncle is always looking for young, honest entrepreneurs to invest in," she said. "He believes small businesses are the backbone of this country." Tunde smiled politely. "I appreciate that, but people say those kinds of opportunities only happen in movies." "Then maybe it's time life surprised you," she said, smiling. 2 weeks later, Clara introduced him to Chief Douglas, her uncle, a tall man in his 60s with a beard the color of wisdom and eyes that had seen both war and peace. They met in the chief's study, where the scent of old books mingled with polished wood. "Clara speaks highly of you," the chief said, gesturing for him to sit. "Thank you, sir. I'm honored." He studied Tunde for a moment. "You want to build a transport company?" "Yes, sir. I already own one car, but I'd like to grow it into a small fleet. To create jobs." to prove that even ordinary people can do extraordinary things if given a chance. Chief Douglas leaned back, thoughtful. I like that. But tell me, do you drive with ambition or with gratitude? Tunde hesitated, unsure. Both, I hope. The chief nodded slowly. Good. Because ambition can take you places, but gratitude helps you return home. Then he smiled. I'll invest 20 million naira in your business. But make sure you carry others up with you. Tunde's eyes widened. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. The chief waved it off. Don't thank me. Thank this woman who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Clara's eyes glowed softly. Chief Douglas leaned forward, resting his hands on his carved walking stick. Young man, he said, when you drive with purpose, the ancestors clear the road ahead. But when you drive with pride, even a smooth road will break your axle. He chuckled gently. Remember this, a man's wealth is not measured by the car he drives, but by how many people he lets ride beside him. Tunde bowed his head. Yes, sir. I understand. Within a month, the first car under Tunde Motors was painted and branded, a sleek white sedan with his slogan across the door, driven by character. Within 2 months, there were 3 cars. He hired 2 young drivers from his neighborhood and paid them fairly. Word spread. The same commuters who once scrolled impatiently through their phones now waited specifically for Tunde Motors. The local newspaper ran a feature titled, From Street Therapist to Business Owner. That evening, as the sun set behind Davenport skyline, Tunde stood beside one of his cars, wiping the hood clean. Clara walked toward him, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. You've done it, she said. He smiled. We've done it. She laughed. No, Tunde. You worked for it. I only believed in what was already there. The wind lifted her hair. The moment felt quiet but full, like the calm after rain. Across town, Gloria scrolled past the same article on her phone. Her reflection stared back from the dark screen, tired, older, but quieter too. For a long time, she didn't move. Then she whispered, he made it. The words tasted like humility and healing. Back at the garage, Tunde locked the gate and looked out at the horizon. The city hummed, alive and vast. He smiled to himself and whispered, Mama was right. Some storms clear the road ahead. Morning crept gently over Davenport, rinsing the city in a pale gold that settled on balconies, market stalls, and windshields like a blessing. The rain had done its work. Streets shone as if newly laid, and the air carried the layered notes of a kara frying, damp earth, and distant talking drums. Outside a modest bungalow on a quiet lane, a row of clean white sedans waited. Tunde Motors printed neatly on each door, the letters a promise rather than a boast. Inside, warmth lived in ordinary things. A pot of jollof steamed on the stove, releasing the comforting scent of pepper and thyme. Laughter drifted from the living room, where Lara arranged cups while 2 of Tunde's young drivers debated football with exaggerated seriousness. Clara tied a light scarf around her hair and moved between kitchen and table, her simple movements turning the morning into an easy ritual. When Tunde joined her, he carried a tray of cutlery and a quiet smile. Your drivers will eat my entire budget, she teased, eyes dancing. Let them try, he said. I increased the grocery line just for today. The bell rang. It was not the cheerful knock of a neighbor or a delivery. It was hesitant, as if the visitor wasn't sure whether to arrive or retreat. Tunde and Clara exchanged a glance. He went to the door. Gloria stood on the step, smaller than memory. The bright armor of glamour was gone. She wore a plain blouse and a long skirt. Her wig was neat but tired, her eyes ringed with the violet of sleepless nights. She clutched a small purse like a shield. Good morning, Tunde, she said softly. He inclined his head. Good morning, Gloria. Silence stretched, an old road, walked carefully. May I come in? Only for a minute. Her voice trembled. Please. He considered, then opened the door and stepped aside. She entered with the caution of someone who knew she had forfeited the right, and paused as the room's warmth met her. The clink of cups, the smell of rice and pepper, the echo of friendly banter. Lara looked up, expression composed, then turned back to stacking plates. Clara offered a small nod that was neither welcome nor rejection. It was permission for the moment to unfold as it needed to. Gloria faced Tunde. "I heard about your company," she said. "I saw the article. You did it." "I had help," he replied, glancing at Clara. "But yes, we built something honest." She swallowed. "I came to say I was wrong," she said, not racing through the words but placing them one by one like stepping stones. "I mistook money for meaning. I thought shine would silence fear. It didn't. It made it louder." Her eyes wavered but did not fall. "I am sorry for how I treated you. For the boutique. For the words I threw like stones. You did not deserve them." The room stilled. Even the simmering pot seemed to listen. Tunde held her gaze. "Thank you," he said. "Apology accepted." A breath left her, shaky with relief. "I don't expect anything. I know I lost the right to ask. But if there is any corner of your heart that could allow a second chance, I would try differently. I would be understanding. I would learn contentment." Lara's eyes flicked to her brother. Clara remained still, hands folded, present steady as a shoreline. Tunde's voice was gentle but unwavering. "Understanding is not a costume, Gloria. It's a practice you wear when no one is looking." He let the thought linger, then added, "We are not going back. That season ended. I wish you well." Tears gathered but held. "All right," she whispered. Then, "Would you help me start over?" "Not with diamonds," she said, a ghost of a smile. "With work. If I bring you a real business plan, something small, something honest, would you look at it?" He nodded once. "I will. If it is practical and you are prepared to build slowly, I'll advise you, and if it's solid, I'll help you find footing." "Thank you," she said, voice breaking on the second word. She composed herself. "That is more mercy than I deserve." "Mercy isn't about deserving," he replied. "It is about release." Clara stepped forward then, offering a clean handkerchief wordlessly. Gloria accepted it with a quiet gratitude that didn't try to dramatize itself. She glanced toward the table where the two drivers had pretended to be fascinated by a cup, then back to Tunde. "You have good people around you," she said. "I do," he answered. "That's the truest wealth I've found." She nodded. "Then I won't take more of your morning." She returned the folded handkerchief as if it were a contract. Borrowed, honored, returned. "Thank you for letting me speak." He opened the door. "Take care, Gloria." She stepped into the sunlight. It lay across the stoop like a path. For a moment, she looked as if she might turn back, then she squared her shoulders and walked away. No music, no applause, just the dignity of a person choosing a harder road because it led somewhere real. When the door closed, the room exhaled. Lara moved to the kitchen, wiping her eyes briskly as if dust had risen. The drivers resumed their argument about football with unnecessary enthusiasm. Clara stood beside Tunde, not asking if he was all right because the peace in his posture had already answered. "She meant it," Clara said softly. "She did," he replied. "And I believe she will find her way." Clara looked toward the window where sunlight made soft lace on the curtain. "So will you, again and again?" He smiled. "With you, perhaps it will not always feel like starting over." They set the table together. Jollof landed in bowls with a homey thud. Laughter returned as if it had only stepped outside to rinse its face. When they finally sat, one of the drivers raised a plastic cup in mock ceremony. "To Tunde Motors," he announced, "driven by character." "Driven by character," the room echoed. As the meal began, a small boy from next door shyly poked his head through the door. "Uncle Tunde," he asked, "how did you become rich?" Tunde chuckled. "I'm not rich the way you think." "Then what kind of rich are you?" "The kind that sleeps well," he said. the kind that doesn't hide from the rain. The boy considered this as if adding a new word to his dictionary, then grinned and ran off. Later, Tunde and Clara stepped outside. The cars gleamed like quiet promises. The key in his hand felt lighter than a wallet and heavier than a vow. The air held the clean after-smell of rain, a reminder that storms are not only loud but useful. "Shall we drive?" he asked. "Let's," she said. They climbed into the front seat of the original car, the one that had listened to the city's secrets long before it wore a logo. The engine turned with a confident hum. As they rolled down the lane, Davenport opened around them. Women balancing baskets of fruit, a tailor beating dust from fabric, two schoolchildren racing shadows, a drummer testing patterns for an evening gathering. The city did what cities do. It forgot, forgave, and moved forward. They passed the spot where long ago Tunde had parked and whispered plans to a skyline that hadn't yet learned his name. He touched the steering wheel with a gratitude that didn't need words. "Funny," he said, eyes on the road. "How losing what I thought I needed taught me what I actually want." Clara turned to him, sunlight warming the curve of her cheek. "And what is that?" "Peace I don't have to perform," he said. "And love that doesn't ask me to trade my character for its comfort." Her hand found his, briefly, simply. Outside, a vendor fanned smoke over roasting corn. The air wrapped them in a small blessing of salt, pepper, and memory. They drove on. By afternoon, the heat rose and softened again, the way days in Davenport often do, never in a hurry to finish, always willing to forgive. The city had already folded last night's gossip into a new story. The streets offered their quiet parable, move or be moved. On a dresser inside the house, a cracked leather wallet lay beside a ring of car keys, old symbol and new. Once, a thin wallet and an empty account had defined Tunde's worth in the eyes of someone who chose chandeliers over character. Now the keys spoke another language: reliability, responsibility, work that turned into shelter for others. Wealth had changed its clothes. It no longer shimmered, it endured. Far away in a small room, Gloria sat at a table with a notebook open, sketching the outline of a market kiosk. Inventory, rent, margins, nothing glamorous, everything real. On the page corner, she wrote a single line: "If it is honest, it is enough." Beside the notebook lay an empty jewelry box. The necklace it once carried had become a lesson, not a loss. She closed the lid gently, as one closes a chapter without tearing the page. And the rain, the same rain that once dramatized humiliation, returned toward evening as a soft curtain over roofs and roadways, rinsing dust from hibiscus leaves, tapping a patient rhythm on corrugated iron. It did not accuse, it renewed. Some storms, it seemed, are not punishments but washings. When the day settled into blue, Tunde and Clara parked beneath a jacaranda tree and listened to its purple bells sift into the street. Lights came on in windows, one by one, as if the city were remembering names. Because greed destroys faster than poverty. Because true wealth wears humility and feeds whoever sits at the table. Because when love is tested, only character endures. In a world that mistakes brightness for light, what will you choose to reflect? If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. A brand new tale is coming soon, full of twists, betrayal, and redemption. Until then, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next story.